What's up, Magnetic Men Club? We are back here on another Friday with you guys. We figured we would talk about something a little closer to home today. We wanted to talk about what it means to live in a fatherless home, what it means to come from a fatherless home, and how fatherless homes have kind of contributed to a lot of the weak men and the problems that we have in society systemically. And so really what that means is it's not really that fathers are abandoning their houses. There's a lot of factors that contribute to this stuff. Like a lot of it has to do with women needing to be independent, the feminist movement. A lot of it comes with, society getting easier to live in. We don't actually have to go have those hard jobs that a lot of men had to have in the past, where they had to go to war, they had to go and basically work in the mines and all that kind of stuff. And so really society has just gotten softer and softer and easier over time. And that's really what's contributed to this boy crisis and having these fatherless homes. I personally come from a fatherless home. I know Jared actually comes from a fatherless home here too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He was around, but he was more of absent. And right. I would actually lump fatherless homes into those where you have a father at home.
Absent father, yeah.
But they're absent either emotionally or they're just checked out. As soon as they get home, they're checked out. So that's still, I consider those fatherless homes. They're there, but they're just taking up space.
Right. 100%.
Oftentimes the mom or the female in that picture she has 2 kids plus kind of a deadbeat. She has 3 kids. So
right.
It's a net negative. It's a drain on her even more too. So
that's exactly what leads to this. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about this stuff today, was the fact that, hold on, I think my name is Jared here too.
Oh, hey.
But anyway, that's a lot of what contributes to this stuff though too, is the fact that like society tells women that, you are independent, you can be independent, you can go and get state assistance, you can get child support, all that stuff. You don't need men. Who needs men around anymore? Men should just all go and die. And so today men feel more useless than ever. Like I remember reading a lot of Rich Cooper's books. I remember reading the Rollo Tomassi series and all that kind of stuff too. And I remember going through that stuff and like it pissed me off. Like it immediately like enraged me. I'm like, this is so stupid that this is how society has gone. This is how everybody sees everything, and everybody kind of has a skewed view based on the media, based on what we've learned in school and all that stuff too. And I think that we need to kind of come in here and set the record straight as to why this is and why we're dealing with this and what has led to this.
Yeah. And I kind of dug up some facts between the U.S. Census Bureau. I read this article. Basically, it's a paper from the sociologist at David Podom. I guess I think it's a college, but I'm not exactly sure. But kind of read all this information on just the facts around fatherless homes. I like to read a few of those because I didn't believe it. I was like, holy.
Right.
And a couple of them are, I apologize if I'm looking down, I'm reading them. It says 85% of youth in prison come from fatherless homes. 85% of all the youths in prison come from fatherless homes. I mean, that in and of itself is crazy. 39% of students in the U.S., that's first grade through 12th, have never had a father in their home. 39%, so that's 40%. And it makes sense because 40% of single mothers have never been married. So it does make sense. There's about 40% of them, there's never been a father in the home. Out of that, they're 4 times more likely to live in poverty than children with a father. Of course, that also makes sense if you consider now you have dual income where both parents are working. And generally speaking, men tend to work longer. They have typically better jobs. And
right.
So they do kind of contribute more into that family where the mother, she's working, but she's also taking care of the kids. So having a single parent home or single mom, even single dad homes, I mean, you're lost in income. It's more detrimental on the female side than the man side because the average man in America is about $45,000 a year is what they make. And now that does dip down between some different ethnic backgrounds, but as a whole, it's around 45 is about the median. So that's still not a bad amount of money to make on a single father side. On a single mom is about 37,000. So fatherless homes are 2 times more likely to drop out of school. So if you have a fatherless or a lack of father in the home, you're 2 times more likely to drop out of school. Girls without fathers have 100% increase in risk of being obese.
Right.
I thought that was crazy. That 100%.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And they're 4 times more likely to become moms before the age of 20.
Yeah, that's actually some of the statistics that I looked up here too. Is the fact that they're basically, what was it? Roughly 70% of teenage pregnancies come from women raised in fatherless homes.
Yeah, it's crazy. Some background on this: 57% of all Black African American Black households have no father. 31% of all Hispanic households have no father. About 20% of the Caucasian white households have no father. So it's mind-boggling to me, and I do want down the road. I do want to get into the why, because there's a stark change that happened in 1965 that actually started this whole thing, and
Right. Yeah.
feminist movement was actually 1848 it started. That is a contributing factor, but it's not what happened in 1965. And you can map it out from that time all the way up until about 1996. And I'll explain a little bit later, if you guys stay with me, what happened in 1996 that caused a shift to start making these numbers come down, but they're still not nearly what they need to be. Because now you have generational. You have, from 1965, you have 4 different generations now of people living without fathers, or different, definitely different ethnic Black backgrounds. They think it's normal. Dad's just not around. So what happens? What they think is normal, then they're not around. I'm having a kid. I'm not going to be around. The mom takes care of the kid. And then it's so on and so on. And it's very interesting. Remember that number, 1965, or that year, because it's a direct relation or cause of what's happening. It's mind-boggling when I found this. Another one is 75% of all rapists that displayed some type of displacement anger, which, of course, if you're a rapist, you have anger. They associated to some level abandonment trauma from their fathers. That's crazy to me. They're so mad at their fathers. Their mothers are raising them, or maybe the state's raising them at young age. They're getting abused by somebody else, and they end up becoming partly. And listen, when I quote statistics can be bent. So these aren't hard numbers, but it is a starting point to start a dialogue about this.
100%.
I never say there's a statistic and it's a fact. These are some facts that I've come up with.
That's my background. That's my childhood. I can totally tell you from experience. That's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah. 75% of all people polled, it was a 20,000 people poll that they did on people that volunteered this information who were in substance abuse clinics or treatment facilities. 75% said the major contributing factor to their drug or alcohol addiction was no father in their home growing up. And I look at it again. My grandfather, World War II, came home. He worked. He had 6 kids. None of his kids, yes, he worked all the time. My grandmother, raised the kids, but he came home and he was a presence in the household. There was no fighting between mom and dad. They stuck it out. And they've all grown up to have relatively healthy relationships, obviously having different, children and, family, stuff like this. None of them have substance abuse issues. None of them wanted to run away. Suicide rate is 3 times higher for fatherless households. So it just goes to show you, when there's a 2-parent household in there, a loving 2-parent household, that it's a net benefit to both daughter and son. And like Chase, you didn't really have a father growing up. You had stepfathers.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about that, because a lot of people I hear on social media, and some people I coach, about the stepfather. It's actually, you would think that it would be better to have at least a stepfather in the picture. It actually makes it worse.
I can completely agree on that. Yep.
Yeah. Not all the time, but most of the time it makes it worse for that child. And I'm sure you have more experience with that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts of growing up and having different fathers, like a couple different stepfathers. I didn't have that. I mean, I had my biological father. He just wasn't around that much. So I do think in some ways I probably had it better, that there wasn't some strange guy coming in and out. I didn't have to worry be in competition with this guy, or he didn't have to be in competition with me. We didn't really have that with him. He basically just passed out on the couch and got up and went back to work. And we're like, oh, there he is, So in a way, I still had it better. And when I talked to you before about this, where my mom stuck it out, she didn't love him. She didn't really even like him, but she stuck it out and stayed with him right up until my younger brother at 18. Well, he was 19 at the time. Then she got a separation. She waited till high school was over for all of them. And so I love to hear your opinions on the stepfather, even stepmother role, and actually how it can make it worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love it.
So for me, basically, the way that I grew up was pretty abnormal, I think, to a lot of other people. Maybe it's normal for some people, but in essence, just to kind of put it all short, I had great grandparents that were amazing. My great grandma, my great grandpa, they were amazing people. They totally started businesses. They were amazing members of society. They contributed to everything. They had 6, 7, 8 kids. They just completely had this Happy Valley family inside of Utah, right? And ultimately, a lot of those kids ended up growing up and not being so great. My grandpa being one of them. And he basically got into drugs really bad, never really had a sustainable relationship. And he abandoned my mom, and my grandma, she abandoned my mom too. They left her with my great grandparents. And so my great grandparents pretty much raised her from scratch, right? And so they raised her to be the woman that she was. She completely got attached to them as she got older. And ultimately, it ended up leading to a lot of dysfunctional relationships for her. My dad being the first one, right? My dad grew up in a very dysfunctional environment too. His dad was not good to him. His mom was not good to him. All of them were kind of outcasts, right? And so that ultimately led to me, when I was born, my dad took off. He just took off. He basically came to see me one time when I was about 6 months old, and he took off. And I didn't see him again until I was 17 years old. He paid his child support. I mean, he did that at least every single month. He made sure that was no problem. He had kid after kid after kid with multiple women, and he just basically, a lot of his wages just went to child support, and he just discounted it and said, okay, that's not my money. And so, I mean, he was a good guy in that aspect. He paid his bills, he did all his stuff, and he just basically worked at the mines in the middle of Nevada. I had no idea who the guy was, what he looked like. I didn't have a picture of him. I had no idea what the guy looked like until I saw him for the first time when I was 17 years old. Wow. And so ultimately now, I have a pretty good relationship with the guy now. I mean, I love the guy. He's awesome, but it's still awkward. I mean, I go see him now and it's awkward. I feel like I'm just kind of this guy who's just kind of shoved into the situation. He just kind of has to figure it out. He feels obligated to figure it out. It's not a loving environment, right? It's not an environment where he's been dad my whole life and he's always just been dad and we have this connection. There's no connection. There's just zero connection there, right? And so that's just with that guy. I've had a lot more connection with a lot of the stepdads that I've had. And I've had multiple stepdads, right? First stepdad I had, he was a piece. He was okay. Actually, the first stepdad I had, he was just kind of a drunk. He just kind of sat around and drank most of the time. worked his job, did his thing, took care of his family. He's my brother's dad, two of my brothers actually. And I remember thinking that he was my dad until I was 6 years old. I thought he was my dad. My entire early childhood, I called him dad. He was dad. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, I'm 6 years old. My mom takes me for a ride one day, and she goes, "He's not your dad. Like, your dad's some other guy who's living in the middle of Nevada, working in the mines, whatever." I had no idea. Can you imagine dropping that on a 6-year-old? You know what I mean?
Well, why did she tell you that at 6? Was it something that he said, "I don't like when he calls me dad," or was it?
She got in a fight with him, and she was getting to a point where she's like, "I need confirmation to leave him from you. You're 6-year-old, right?" And so she started talking to me about it, like, "Don't call him dad anymore." I remember packing all of our stuff up and getting ready to move out of his house, and I'm calling him dad in the U-Haul while he's helping us move and stuff. And she's like, "Don't call him dad anymore." Wow. You know, dropping that on a 6-year-old, right? Right. So that's kind of where everything started to fall apart, right? We didn't have a family after that. I raised myself after that. Like, after she moved out of that house, got out of that environment, we moved down to Payson, Utah, and I lived in an apartment with her, and I was responsible for myself at that point. Like, she was never home. She was always out working. She worked like a graveyard shift. When she was home in the mornings and stuff, she basically she was just there. Like, she really wasn't there. She wasn't awake. She wasn't really taking care of me. So I took care of myself. And a lot of the days there wasn't any food in the cabinets. I remember putting water in my cereal and stuff too. That's how bad things got when I was in my early childhood, right? And ultimately, she ended up getting back together with that guy later on. Like, she went and like got with a whole bunch of other guys, and like, she was obviously an independent woman. She thought she was an independent woman, thought she could just take care of everything, take on the whole world and all that stuff too. And that's just who she was. I mean, I love my mom. Don't get me wrong. My mom's amazing. I love my mom. We have a good relationship and all that stuff now. Don't get me wrong on any of this stuff. But that's just what happened, right? That's where we were when I was 6, 7 years old. And then as I got older, I remember we got back together with that guy. We ended up maybe moving out of that house a year later, and she got with another guy who's my other brother's, my youngest brother's dad. And he beat the shit out of me. Like, he came in and he was nice as hell when he first came in. He was trying to, you know, be the nice guy who just kind of slid in. He's taking care of things. He's like, "Here's $20, go to the store. You can keep the change. It's all cool." You know what I mean? Just trying to like basically make her happy. And ultimately, after they got married, like, he used to just beat the shit out of me. He used to beat me like crazy, man. If I was home 10 minutes late from playing with friends, whatever, coming home from school, all this stuff, I remember walking home from school being literally scared to walk in the house because he would find something to hit me for. Yeah. And I remember he used to leave like claw marks on my neck and stuff too. And like, he used to leave like handprint bruises on my face. They wouldn't let me go to school because there was handprint bruises on my face. And so that's just an example, just to paint the picture, right, of what can happen when you're in these kind of scenarios. Because I've had both ends of the spectrum. I had the guy who was really abusive, and I've had the guy that I like my mom's with now, my stepdad now. He's amazing. He's just the most amazing guy you can imagine. He just wants to take care of everything, and that's all he ever does. And like, he's an entrepreneur. He's the one who got me into entrepreneurship. So I just want to show that there's two ends of this spectrum that you can kind of end up in. There is a whole spectrum of guys and situations that you can kind of end up in this scenario, right? I remember when I was a teenager, my mom would bring home guy after guy after guy. And all these guys always wanted to get to her through her kids. It was obvious. They would come, they'd bring gifts to you and all that kind of stuff. They'd give you money, whatever. There was all that kind of stuff going on. And a lot of these guys were simps. You could tell immediately when somebody was a real man and when somebody was a simp. Yeah. And that's when I really started to identify those different things and who I wanted to be and who I didn't want to be. Because like, obviously, there was no men there to initiate me. Yeah. There was nobody there to really show me how to be a man. I mean, I learned how to be a man from these men, man after man after man with her, and then from her, right? And so it never really clicked for me that I was going down the wrong path. It wasn't obvious to me that I might be going down the wrong path, that I might be learning the wrong things, right? I mean, I was just living my life. Yeah. So I didn't know what this could lead to later on in my relationships and where things would kind of go with my kids. Like, it just wasn't on my mind at that point, right? This has become more on my mind as we've gone through this stuff, as we've built up this program and all that stuff too. It's helped me a lot just building this program, honestly, because it's turned me from the man that I was into the man that I am. And now I'm much more concerned about my kids. I'm much more concerned about my boys becoming the right men. I'm much more concerned about what I can do, make sure that I'm here, make sure that I'm there for my kids, because I didn't have that growing up. And so, like I said, it was really dysfunctional for me, going from these simps that she was dating to the guys that were abusive to the guy she's with now, who's a really quality guy. And then to also forming a relationship with my distant father and all that kind of stuff too. It's like I've totally got all that experience under my belt.
So when your mom, your stepdad now, your mom's husband now, how old were you when you met him?
Oh man, that was probably when I was about 20 years old, 21 years old.
Okay, so you were kind of out of the house, or it didn't mean as much because you didn't have to live under a new person's rules. I mean, you were kind of your own man, and probably at that point you were just happy that your mom was happy.
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure. That's all it was about. Like, okay, are you with the right guy? Are you with the guy who's going to make you happy for the rest of your life? And lo and behold, it ended up being the right guy. It ended up being the guy that she really wanted to commit to and all that stuff too. If he would have came 10 years earlier, like, we might be talking about a whole different story here.
Yeah. Well, also, I would imagine being 20 years old, and at 20 you're probably 6'4" already. At that point, you were probably your mom's protector. The roles reversed. At that point, it's a boyfriend. It's a guy to you. It's her husband. But seeing all that trauma, seeing all that, dealing with some of these assholes, you probably now became her protector. And that helped. I mean, obviously, I'm sure he's a great guy and on all this, but that in and of itself is like probably scary to this guy who she got married to. It's like, all right, I'm older. This guy's a 20-year-old buck who's 6'4", 200 and something pounds. He's been through the ringer. I better not F this up. Likewise, your mom was probably like, I think I'm good now. Like, this is a good, solid guy. Chase has been through enough. Last thing I want Chase to do is beat this guy up.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
that's exactly right. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how it went. Yeah.
Yeah, the dynamics crazy when that single, especially in the boys, the daughters we can talk about a little differently, because I do feel a daughter needs a father way more in that pre-pubescent kind of getting into middle school, high school. Yes, a son needs the father for direction, but if a daughter doesn't have that, there's going to be a lot of problems, or there potentially could be a lot of problems. Again, guys, when we talk about this, I'm just making general, just looking at the numbers, looking at everything. We always get some people say, well, this isn't how it was for me. That's great. I'm happy it worked out for you. Maybe you're a stepfather and you have a great relationship with your stepkids. Please know that you're a very small minority. We're talking in general terms. Likewise, if you're a stepmom, maybe you have an amazing relationship with your stepkids. So don't get lost through the weeds when we're talking about this. This is just largely fatherless and absent fathers, because again, you can still be the father in the house, but you're not there. You're there physically, but you're really not offering any insight, called provision. You might be providing money, but you're not providing leadership. You're not providing anything else. And don't get me wrong, largely what I found, if we stay in the stepfather role, a lot of women remarry for the money. I'm not saying they're gold diggers, but they've learned what poverty was. They've learned to struggle through the divorce, or maybe they were never married and they have a kid or two out of wedlock. Once the stepfather does come into the picture, there is an economic, you hope, I mean, why would you marry him? There is an economic benefit to that. And that's great, but there's other problems that could arise, especially during the kids and stuff. And Chase just talked about those. You just don't know. You don't really know somebody until they live with you. And it's kind of hard to get rid of them after that.
I mean, that's the great thing about the situation that I'm in. That's why I'm so passionate about what we do here with Magnetic Men Club and stuff too, because I realized when we first started talking about this stuff that, like, oh man, there's so many men out there that need help with this, that need guidance, that really need other men to bounce ideas off of, other men to initiate them and all that kind of stuff too. Because a lot of these men are just uninitiated and they don't really know what it means to be a man. Like they're not really sure. Like a lot of them are clinging to their mothers. A lot of them are looking for other mothers and women and that kind of stuff too. And it just leads to dysfunction.
Yeah.
I know with my wife, like she was actually in a home where her dad was there, but he wasn't there. Like basically he was always working, right? He was always, he drove truck for a living. And so he was always gone. I mean, he provided and he was there in the sense that he was the provider, but he wasn't really there to support anybody. If anybody needed anything from him, he was distant. When he was home, he was sleeping. That's all he did. And so we've been able to bounce these ideas off of each other, me and my wife here personally too, to really improve our relationship for one thing. And for another thing, to really help us help the other people in this program and that kind of stuff too, because we have that broad experience when we kind of bring our experiences together.
Yeah.
And so that's really what makes a lot of the difference here is the fact that like, yeah, we've been through some shit, but we've overcome it. We've become better people because of it. We've actually been able to become the people that we are, living abroad, living in society, really taking care of ourselves, providing for our kids, whatever that takes, right? I mean, I wouldn't call myself completely successful yet. I mean, but at the same time, I'm on the right path to success as far as I can see. And I'm not unhappy. Like my life with my wife and my family is very different to what I'm used to growing up, right? It's not at all the same. And I'm here for my kids every single day. I see my kids all day, every single day. I'm here to guide them, talk to them, have conversations with them. And even a lot of the stuff that we've learned in this program and stuff too, to be able to, you know, give them that knowledge and all that stuff too. They don't even know what it's like to grow up without a father. I'm always here. I've always been here their whole lives. And so I realized that too from my daughter and how important it is for her and how important it is, like how she's kind of imprinting what a man is based on what I do and what a man is supposed to do and who a man is supposed to be. That's all based on me. It has nothing to do with what her mom teaches her because her mom has a different view of that and what a woman needs to know. Men know other men and they know what other men are after and they're able to really teach girls that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I kind of went the other way when, you know, I was divorced, but then she passed away and I've been a single father for like the last 8 years. But I still think having that masculine structure, the kids benefited from that. My daughter, she went all the way from, you know, her middle school to high school. I was always there. My son, same thing. I was always there. Now, could the argument be made that you didn't have enough or you not all the time, you weren't socially calibrated enough to bring in the femininity side that they may have needed at a moment? Absolutely.
The nurturing, that kind of stuff.
I'm not a very feminine, nurturing person, but they knew I love them. They knew, okay, this is, you know, we're all doing something different. This is all new to us. These are all uncharted, you know, waters. Every year they're alive. 23 is a new season for my daughter. And so we're always learning. But nevertheless, the numbers, the statistics, it's always better to have a two-parent biological household if you can. And you said a lot before. You said about the rise of feminism, how, you know, divorce is rampant and, you know, pretty much 50% of all marriages end in divorce. And so that does create fatherless homes to a degree. Now, the reason why I brought that up is this paper that I read, the very bottom, they use fatherless homes as meaning fathers not in a married household. So you have to take some of this out and take it a little bit, pull some of it out and say that doesn't mean it doesn't mean the father's not there. It just means he's not in the home that the mom and father used to be. It's a divorce, but maybe the father's there half the time, every other weekend. It didn't get specific on this. But again, don't lose the numbers that we say. They're still valid. There's still a concern. You can see it in society how weak men are. You can see it how weak females are. I mean, we have a problem in society where boys think they're girls and girls think they're boys, and everybody thinks that they're special. I remember my grandfather be the first one to say, there's nothing special about any of you. You got to make your way in this world. And this is where I believe that strong, stoic, the daughters and sons seeing the dad working, seeing the dad getting along with the mom. I'm not saying in any marriage, if you just don't like your spouse, that shouldn't be cause for you to get divorced. And this is one of the problems with the way divorce is perceived now. Like, oh, the state has this canon, I'm still going to get paid from him and I'm still going to keep the house and all this stuff. But they're not realizing that it's a detriment to the kids. Now, the father might still be a great father. He might still be in the picture, but he's not there. Enter a stepdad who could be a bad apple. It can start really screwing up this family dynamic. So one of the coaching sessions I did, it was only an hour session with this guy who was talking about getting a divorce. And really, he didn't not like his wife. There was really nothing detrimental in their scenario. He just was bored of her. And I said, do you really think breaking up a household because you're bored of her is the answer? And it so happened we were talking about this subject now, and I had these stats. I said, do you want to possibly do this to your daughter and your son? No. I said, well, maybe you guys need some therapy, or maybe you guys need to have an honest conversation about this, because your feelings, you're just bored. Fuck, I'm bored half the time with shit, and I got to still do it.
Right.
So one of the problems I have is how easy it is to get divorced in society, and how easy it is for a woman to make that decision because the state has her back, as they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but it does create this fatherless void. And with the rise of, if it was a 2-parent household and they're both making decent money, and now the father has to work twice as hard because he has living arrangements and he's got to pay for his kids and alimony, then he gets to see the kids less and less. And so what we're trying to avoid is that, like, listen, you made a choice to be with your wife or your husband. You made a choice to have some babies with them. Your vow is to death do you part. Let's pull that part out. To the kids are 18. To the kids are 21. Can you at least live with each other and do your duty to raise these kids? Or do you want some other male or some other female coming in?
That's a big part of this too. Like that's just it right there. What you just said, actually. I went through this with my mom a lot on both sides of this. On the fact that the father had the kids in one scenario, she had the kids in another scenario, and I watched them go through each side of this. I haven't personally experienced this. I just watched my parents go through this. Because, for me, I've always been with the same girl. We've been together since we were 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
And we got married right out of high school. We've been married ever since. We've had all our kids together. There's never been that split household kind of thing for us. So I've experienced the family life and being in that family life. I've also experienced, like I said, some of my brother's dads getting custody of them.
Yep.
And my mom getting custody of some of my brothers too. And I watched both sides of that. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, there's not one bit of difference from one to the other. They all use the kids as bargaining chips.
Yep.
They all look at it like, oh, I can control you and I can stick it to you through these kids.
Yeah.
And they both did it. I watched dads do it to my mom, and I watched my mom do it to them, back and forth, because they had the courts on their side.
Yeah.
And it's not right. All I ever saw was that it built resentment in my brothers. I watched my brother's dad get custody of him and then bring a stepmom into the household, and she expected that she was mom. She's mom now. There's no other mother in this scenario. You don't have any other mother. I'm mom.
Right.
And that's what it is. And that's how she acted. And that's how she reacted to everything.
Yep.
And so she tried to force my mom entirely out of the scenario. Like, she didn't want her in at all. She didn't want him to have a relationship with her. They wouldn't let him call her. They wouldn't let him have a phone. They wouldn't let him have any social media. And so what happened when he turned 18? He moved to Mexico with my mom.
Yep.
And he doesn't even talk to them anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's the reality of it. That's what you got to realize is what's happening. And then also me moving to Mexico was a big part of this too. And seeing how things were in the US versus here. Because that's the thing you have to realize too, is the fact that these numbers go up drastically in the United States versus other countries.
They do.
Right? It is a drastic difference. Yeah. It's not even marginal. It's not even small. It is a drastic, like 3 to 4 times larger difference in the US versus other countries. That means that there's a single parent household. As far as single parent households go, it's 23, 24% in the United States. Yeah. It's 7% in other countries, in every other country. And I noticed this moving to Mexico and realizing there's so much entitlement in the US. Yeah. Women feel entitled, men feel entitled. It is what it is. They feel like they're entitled to all this stuff. Like, everybody wins, everybody gets a trophy, everybody's special. And so everybody grows up that way and they think, oh, no, I'm special. I'm a special little cucumber, like my mommy said. And that's just who they are. And that's how they grow up. And they get this certain entitlement because of it. Men and women on both sides of that. I realized this moving to Mexico because Mexico was not like that. Nobody here is like that. Nobody here is really living in a first world country where they have everything all the time. Like, we go most days without water here. And it's just life. It's rugged. It's a rugged lifestyle here in Baja. Obviously, it is what it is. It's different than it is in the U.S. because you go back to the U.S. and everybody's like, oh, I have water all the time. I have power all the time. We have all this stuff. And everybody's just entitled. They have this certain entitlement because of it, because they've never lived in an environment outside of that. And so when you go back there, everybody is super entitled. Like, they think they're entitled to certain things.
That's crazy. One of the things that you brought up, kind of bringing back to the step parents thing, when I became a single parent. Now, I had my kids half the time. Jen had them the other half. But when she passed away and I became full-time mom and dad, I knew these numbers or knew of them. And I kind of just knew, for me, they've been through enough. I'm not bringing another female into the house for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's a lot for a female to take on. That their mom passed away, and now you're literally filling the mom role, and nobody could fill her shoes. But that's what you're really asking a female. So I kind of realized, listen, that's not fair to bring anybody into this picture until they're older. And, of course, they're 22 and 18 or 19 now. So anybody that, if I ended up, which probably will never happen, I'm just not a marriage kind of guy, but if something happened, it would be like you meeting at 20 your stepdad when it's like, hey, it's Jim. If you don't have to call me dad, no shit, I don't have to call you dad. Like, you're my mom's husband. You're not my stepdad. Exactly. So I've always advocated to people on the step parent role that your best bet, and even the statistics, we can get more into with the numbers, kind of say it's still better being in the single family household than bringing in step parents. It's the child, even though there's still a detriment, they're still better off not having that, because it increases. This is one of the things I want to bring in. It increases a child's anxiety, could increase their depression levels, behavioral issues, having a new parent, mom or dad, into the household. It also, and I didn't realize this or contemplate it, but resentment issues on all sides.
Right.
Resentment from the stepdad to the new wife, because there's the kid in there. He's not getting enough time with the wife. Resentment from the kid to the stepdad. You're not my real dad. Resentment from the wife to the stepdad on disciplinary issues. It just becomes resentment on on all fronts. And it's like, that's a lot for this new family to take in. And, this goes right into 64% of all second marriages end in divorce. I get it now. I'm like, yeah, having this kind of shit thrown at you, of course the divorce rate, nobody should be able to can deal with that. You know, again, there are rarities. I'm not saying there aren't rarities, but I live, for me, and when I coach my clients, I live in probability, not possibility. The probability is very high that this is going to happen. Now, what do you want to do? Oh, but this and the Disney shit. No, that's possibility. I don't live in possibility land. I live in probability land. And so when I'm talking to guys thinking about this dynamic, or even girls, I just got a coaching with a girl going through a divorce. This is what we're going to bring it up is probability. The probability of you finding a replacement husband biologically, your dad, is never going to happen. It can't happen.
You shouldn't try to. And that's the thing too. I've seen this from all sides. Like I've seen this from the new father getting with a stepmother. I've seen this from the single mother needing to have a stepfather. And I've seen this from like both sides really just trying to work it out and stuff too. The one thing that I can tell you right now, like when it happens though, like when you bring in a new stepmother or a new stepfather, they immediately just feel this hidden obligation to try and be the parent, to try and step up and like, oh, I need to help out. I need to be mom because that other person is a piece of crap. And they immediately start feeding into that. Like, oh, this other person's a piece of crap. So they start feeding that to everybody. And the kids obviously see all this. Like whether you think they don't or not, they see all this going on and they're absorbing all this stuff too. And it's just not a healthy environment to be in. That's one thing that you have to realize. I know you're trying to create a healthy environment, but you're not creating a healthy environment.
Yeah. And all three of those dynamics have the outsider syndrome and the rescuer role pulled in. The kid feels like an outsider because this is mom's new boyfriend, new husband. I'm not part of that clique. The guy is, hi. The guy is looking at the bond between the daughter and the mom and the son of the daughter. I'm not genetically tied to this kid. And the wife or the girl is looking at the two dynamics as like they aren't, like nobody says it, but again, it's reality. They're not biologically yours. So it does cause problems. And I know people don't like to hear this shit, but I speak in reality. So we'll kind of get off that topic because it's really, we went off topic, but not really. This is why second marriage is 64% end in divorce, because you're merging households. This is one of the reasons why it doesn't work, is because of this dynamic. Now, we're running a little bit out of time, so I did want to bring in what I found. 1965, really 1966, it was implemented, but 1965, the Great Society. Lyndon Johnson was president. His whole platform was welfare, help with disease, help with food. There was food shortages during that time. There was urban decay. It was basically all of these social nets that you see right now. Now, from 1965, that was the very first year a lot of this got tracked. Divorces started going higher, not to the level they are now, but single father or single parent households started getting more and more. Why is that? Because when you were on welfare, the less income you showed, the more they paid. And they were actually going from house to house. It started in African American communities where they're saying, hey, if you get rid of your husband, if your husband leaves, we'll pay for your two children. I can go deep into the rabbit hole on this, but I'll keep it just general on what happened. The government wanted to try to bring up people from poverty. So it was a good system in theory, but what happens to all humans when they're giving stuff, constantly giving stuff, and it's over year, month after month, this check comes in. Food's always on the table. Everybody's comfortable. What happens? You become used to it, and then you become to expect it. Now, In 2023, about $32 trillion is owed or an obligation on just the welfare systems. And there's 80 different welfare systems out there, whether you call it Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, Section 8, public assistance. It goes on and on. It's the biggest part of our spending. Now, I say this because it started in 1965. And it was a good idea, but all the things they wanted to touch upon, they fucked up. People are still hungry, yet there's food stamps everywhere because there's fraud involved in all of this. Medicaid, Medicare, there's fraud involved in all of this. And when you have a society who is just, they're paid to not work, the more kids they have, the more public assistance. Guys, I do real estate. Most of my properties I sold, I deal with this day in and day out. If somebody has one kid, they get X amount per month for housing. If they have two, they get X amount. If they have three, they get X amount. There is no cutoff. So when it becomes generational and the mom teaches the daughters and the sons, and it goes on, they know how the game works. They know how the system works. And dad's not around, and it gets worse and worse every generation because the dads just aren't around. They're used to having sex, having kids, and leaving. They're used to it. They think that's normal. And so now you have what happened in 1996. This is important to tell you because it's actually coming down a little bit. 1996, Clinton was in office. He vetoed this twice, but the Republican Congress actually passed the Welfare Reform Act. And then it actually required people to work a minimum of 20 hours a week or go to some training to get a job. Prior to that, you could live your entire life on welfare. It was supposed to be temporary. It never was. People from 1965 who lived all the way to 1975 and 85 were getting these checks religiously. This is what caused initially this idea of, I don't need a man. You hear modern women now, I don't need a man, because what happened is society's told them, no, you don't. We'll pay for you. We'll cover you. You don't need him. He's no good. Okay, well, you have more money, but now your kids you can't control because you need that male figure in the life that the government got rid of. This, again, we can talk about this as all by design, but we won't. This is a result of what happened. And in 1996, they sort of put an end to some of these programs, not all. And you do start seeing these rates fall a little bit, not much, but it's better than what it was. And here we are at 2023, Medicaid, Medicare, all of these social networks is a lockbox. No politician can touch it. They all need to, but none of them will touch it because they'll get thrown right out. And this is what's going to lead America right into bankruptcy.
It's true.
Definitely.
That's the biggest thing, too, about America versus other countries in the world. Other countries in the world are not completely putting all of their citizens on welfare like America is.
Right.
And that's why these numbers are so drastic in the U.S. versus other countries, too. I'm on the outside looking in. I live in Mexico. This stuff is not a thing in Mexico. You can't just go jump on welfare in Mexico. It doesn't work that way. And even me being in Mexico, I can't just go jump on welfare. I live in Mexico. So like they wouldn't give me welfare. Mm-hmm. And so that's the biggest thing too, is starting to understand, like, if I want money, it's on me.
Yeah.
I got to go make the money. There's no other way. I have to figure it out. There's no other safety net or anything like that. I've watched this with all of my wife's siblings and stuff too. They all realize, like, oh, well, we can just go live back at home and save our money, and we'll have a room there, and all of our kids will live there too, and we'll all be on welfare. And I've seen it again and again and again from so many other people, and it just pushes off ownership. Nobody takes ownership anymore. Everybody's just entitled, and that's where that entitlement comes from. They go, okay, well, I'll just go jump on that welfare.
Yep, it started then, added different programs. Then we can also talk about One of the tenets of feminism is free sexual expression, and then you have children out of wedlock. We can talk about all that, but at the end of the day, when you don't have a two-parent household where the dad is actively involved in that child's life. Now, again, I'll go one step further. You can be divorced as long as the dad's active in those kids' lives. It's better to be living in the same house, but if you just can't, and that dad is still actively involved, let him be. Let him be for your kids. Even if a woman's watching this and trying to use this as leverage to get more money, you're fucking your kids up. You're absolutely fucking your kids up. If this man wants to be part of that life, let him.
Dad knows how to cut the kids off. He knows exactly how much they need, how to make sure they don't completely fail, but he also makes sure that they're going to fend for themselves.
Right.
And the biggest thing, too, is understanding that the government wants this. Like, they want you on welfare. They want to be able to have you on welfare. They want you on unemployment. Like, a lot of the guys that are raising the interest rates right now, they're raising the interest rates so the unemployment numbers go up. And as soon as unemployment numbers go up, they go, okay, we can drop the interest rates a little bit. But they wait for the unemployment numbers to go up. What does that mean? They want you to jump on unemployment. They want you to be unemployed. They want to shift the market. That's how they control it. That's why they have those safety nets in place. But like I said, it makes everybody completely dependent on the system. And they want you to be dependent on the system. They don't want you to go fend for yourself and learn how to make your own money.
Absolutely. The government wants people dependent upon them. We need to be dependent as far as free-thinking adults, men and women who have kids together. You need to look out for the best interest of you. Society is always going to look out for its best interest. You got to look out for your best interest in your microcosm society, those 2 kids, 1 kid, whatever you guys have together. It's your job to raise that kid to be as healthy as possible, as I don't really put weight on happiness, but adjusted as possible, and to be productive. What this great society did was really make millions of people unproductive, but yet they get the benefit of everyone else's hard work. And again, that's a whole other discussion we can do, but it took the fathers out of the equation, and it made all of these boys who are watching mom do all the work, but not really working. She's can't work. How defeating that is. Think about how defeating it is. And here's the other part of public assistance and all this, because I have been on both sides. I understand both sides. Some of these people actually want to work. Some of these people are sick and tired, but here's what the government does. They say, okay, you are making $2,000 a month. I'm just using an arbitrary number. You're making $2,000 a month. This pays for your rent, your food, your heat, blah, blah, blah. You're left over $500 a month, whatever it is. Okay. Oh, you got a job. Oh, okay. So your job, you pay $15 an hour and you're making, say, $300 a week. Now you're making $1,200. Well, they're going off gross. They know they're going to tax that shit. They don't tax public assistance. Now your net might be $780, we'll call it $800. They're going to take that exactly from you, probably half of your $2,000. Now you're negative $200. Now you're off $200 for working. So they punish you to work. This is how it works. And I'm not saying everybody on public assistance all are deadbeats. Some of them, they're stuck. They're absolutely stuck. They cannot get out of it. And that's what the government wants, guys. I'm telling you, the government's just happy. They're like, oh, cool. It's another vote for a certain party that wants all of this. That's all it is. And it screws up society as a whole because you have no fathers involved in this. You have these boys growing up without a male father figure, and what they see sometimes is the wrong male father figure. They see gangbangers, they see drug abusers, they see all of these guys out there who are selling drugs. They think they're cool, and then they get into it, and this is why our incarceration rate's so high. This is why 92% of all males in prison today are fathers. Well, if they're in prison Where are the kids? The kids are fatherless homes, maybe being raised by another man who doesn't have their best interests at heart. So it's a problem that we can solve. I think first the government has to really do something about some of these social programs, but a lot of it has to do with just adults being adults and not being children. And say, look, I had a kid with you. We got to figure this shit out. Unless it's an abusive relationship, unless there's, trauma involved, then fine, you need to leave, and that's fine. But this just general, I want a divorce because I don't need no man. I don't need this. I can do this all on my own. Well, you probably can, but it could be at a detriment to your children. And that's just a choice. That's just something that you're going to have to decide that's right, best for you. But just know your children could be involved, could be at a negative for this, and probably will be. Probably will be. That's all I got to say on the subject. I'll let you finish it off.
I mean, that's the thing, though. Is like a lot of them just want to keep us split. They want to keep us split by whether I'm a man or you're a woman. They want to keep us split by I'm Republican, you're Democrat. They want to keep us split because, like, when society is split on certain issues, it makes you not look at them. You don't look at them and hold them accountable. They just want your votes. They just want to get the most votes they possibly can. They don't want people that hold them accountable. Right. So that's the thing, too, is if more people banded together and realized, you might be a woman, I might be a man, that doesn't matter. Because, like, one big thing that I've seen come out of this is the rise of incel society, like all the red pill stuff and those guys being so pissed off at women and women's promiscuity and women's entitlement and the modern woman and feminism and all that stuff. And you got to realize all that is doing is keeping you split. And it really isn't. I mean, it's a philosophy. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that Rich Cooper puts out there. It's a lot of stuff that Rollo Tomasi puts out there. But I'm going to tell you right now, you're just getting started on the path. You haven't seen every side of the cube yet, right? You've only seen one side of it. And I get that you're pissed off and that you want to, blame women for a lot of your problems and stuff too. But it's not all down to women. There's so many levels to this. There's so much going on around us that we need to realize, okay, what is it going to take for us to really systemically fix society? And first thing is everybody needs to be held accountable, including you, including everybody. Every single person needs to take responsibility and be held accountable for who they are and what their lifestyle is and what they need to do. First things first, fix yourself. Just focus on yourself. Just focus on fixing you and the things inside of you that you feel are broken, the traumas that you need to look at and fix. That's the point of having a program like we have here, because we have other men who have gone through this stuff, and we have other men in this program who just want to help other men overcome this stuff, me included. And I've realized that that's one of the biggest issues that we have in society is the fact that, like, men need to be initiated by other men. So you need to find other male friends. You need to find other male role models. You need to get into programs like this where we're teaching this stuff. That's one of the biggest things. We need to come together as a society and stop letting them split us by who we are and what our gender is, what we believe, and all that different stuff. And that's what I'll leave you guys with for me today is the fact that, like, we need to come together. We need more friends. We need more males to initiate us. And we need to be a part of a group that we feel like we belong to. We need to take ownership. And we need really responsibility. You need to take responsibility for your life and the choices that you make, having your kids being included into that. If you have kids, take care of your kids, no matter what it takes. I know it might be hard. I know it might be an uphill battle. I know she might have custody and the courts are on her side. That's just the way it is in society. But you just got to keep pushing, and you got to make sure you take care of your kids. Absolutely. That's the biggest part of this. That's 100%. Where we start to change this.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a good conversation, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the link below, or feel free to go to our website, book a call with us. You can just ask us a question. We have a chat widget right there. It's a real-time widget. If you want a question, drop it. We'll get right back to you. With that, I hope you guys have an amazing weekend, and thanks for tuning in. And if you got anything that you want us to talk about, you can also let us know. We'd be more than happy to create some content on that for you as well. And I'll do a video on this as well. I'll get a little bit more into the meat on the 1965. I'll throw in the feminists because they did fuck up some of this as well. But most of this, like I said, did come from the government. It just did,
Yep, exactly. All right, that's all we got for you guys today. We will be back here next Friday with another topic for you guys. If there's anything you guys want us to cover, let us know. We're here for you guys. Yeah, kids are back here having their fun.
All right.
That's what it is. Since the time changed, we're an hour ahead now. So the kids are down here with me now. So we'll work through this. But if there's anything you guys want us to cover, let us know. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you for your service, Jared.
Yes, sir. I forgot that's Saturday tomorrow. Jeez. Okay. Thank you.
For sure. You guys take it easy. Have a great weekend.
Hey, guys.